Hey, welcome back to the Careful Wanderer channel. On this channel, I talk about travel in Africa, more specifically West Africa. I also share general travel planning tips and tricks and suggestions. And lastly, I talk about African-inspired experiences you can have wherever you go. Today I'm talking about something really close to my heart, and it's going to be a two-parter, and I'm going to be sharing with you the reasons why when you travel within West Africa or within the continent as a whole, it is best for you to choose local African-owned companies. Now be aware, I'm not talking about African-based companies, I'm talking about African-owned travel tour operators, companies that are owned by African people, and I'm going to be sharing reasons why in the next two videos I'll be putting out. Let us get into it. As a side note, I am going to be trying out different angles because I kind of want to be a bit more creative about how I do things and not keep things the same and keep things boring. Let's get into why you should choose African-owned travel companies or tour operators. The first reason is their local knowledge and their regional expertise. Now, Africa is huge. Africa is vast. Africa is massive. So you're not going to have one person that's really going to know in depth, fully, the culture, the history, the geography, simply because within any singular African nation, there are so many different people groups, so many different expressions of culture, that the best thing about working with African tour operators is that they know this, and they often have a huge network of guides or drivers of people that they work with when they're building up their tours for you that are local to certain regions, local to certain areas. So when I was in Ethiopia, the guide I had in Addis was different from the guide I had in Lalibela, and the guide I had in Gondo was different from the guide that I had in Axum, simply because all these different places have their own history, have their own stories, so much are going on, and all these guys were local, grew up, lived in these places, and from there be able to share and talk to me and show me their city, show me their town, show me their area. And it just makes such a difference when you have this experience. Number two is that guides and travel company owners and people that work in the tourism industry, they're in Africa, number one, they're extremely hardworking and they're extremely passionate about sharing their country with you. For some African countries, not for all, for many African countries, tourism is kind of on the back step. So people that go into it, that take their time showing people around and creating experiences, creating itineraries for visitors, they're often doing it with a government that may not really fully understand why tourism is important or what the big deal is. And some of them, they've been doing it for years, like for decades, and they're committed and they're passionate and they know what they're doing is important, even with the wider world or the wider culture around them may not fully get to grips with it. I'm glad to say, as time is going on, that is kind of changing, especially with what's going on in the world right now. They're seeing that tourism is an important thing, and more countries are trying to tap into that and see what they can do to be ready for when things fully open up again, hopefully within a few years. This is another thing for me, because obviously my channel is talking about Africa travel, but is also talking to the needs and the concerns of people in the diaspora like me, who grew up abroad or maybe for generations have lived outside of Africa. They kind of reconnecting home. African tour guides, they understand that we are coming home not just to have fun. We are coming home to have fun, to explore, to have adventures and do all these things to learn the culture. But another huge reason why we're going back is we're going back to reconnect with our past, reconnect with our heritage and our cultures. So they understand that this is, for many of us, this is often a coming home moment, where someone who's doesn't fully understand the African diaspora dynamic will not fully be able to grasp, and they can help you work through that. There are going to be moments where you're just going to want to sit somewhere and cry your eyes out. There's sometimes you're going to be full of joy and excitement because of what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and just realize, hey, we do that. You know, and you're in a completely different country that may have no connection to. You're seeing things going on in the culture that you do in the African diaspora, wherever part of the African diaspora you are. It's going to encourage you. It's going to make you feel connected in some way. And they're going to understand this. This is why I definitely encourage you. If you're going home, have an African guide, have an African company help you and put together your trip, because it's going to make all the difference in the world. They'll give you that space to reconnect and to come home. I kind of touched on this before with point 1, talking about their regional expertise, but it also goes beyond guides and drivers and people within the tourism industry. African-owned tour operators and African-owned travel companies, they've had to network and connect with people in many different areas. We're talking about hotels, obviously, restaurants, even in places that you wouldn't typically think to connect with travel and tourism. They have connections there, whether it's in the markets, whether it's things you want to buy things, whether it's something as simple you need to fix your phone, they would know how to connect you to trustworthy people. Disclaimer, this is why it's very important that you need to go with a good tour operator, not just necessarily the cheapest, someone who's good and well established, because they're not going to risk their reputation trying to get money out of you when you have a problem and you're asking them for help. So I would say there's other things that you may not realize you need, or maybe you not realize you want to try and do or go and see, that maybe it's not strictly tourism, but they can help you set up for you because they have an extensive network. You can tap into that as their client, as their customer. So the last point for today is, with an African guide, with a local guide in Africa, you will have an easier transition into the culture, simply because they can tell you and explain to you certain things you shouldn't do, things that may not be considered respectful, any certain maybe mindsets or certain points of views that people in the local town or city or area, how they see things, how they perceive things, and they can help you work through it. Like the guide that finally helped me understand, I'm going to put a link to my video up there, helped me understand what haggling was all about, and it wasn't the way I thought it was, and it helped me give me a better understanding, and then I began to understand, just help me process that. And there's so many little different things where they explain to you, this is how people think, this is the background for this thinking, there's the cultural, could be the religious significance, or whatever it is, and it's going to help you navigate. Because once the tour is over, you go out and you're exploring, you're immersing yourself in the environment, and you're having a great time. You're not going to commit any you're not going to offend people around the place, because you have been told and someone's explained to you, number one, why not to do that, but also what the reason is behind that, because they know the local culture. This is who they are, this is what the people they grew up around, and they can give you a good full explanation into what's going on. So that's all for me today. As I said earlier, this is a two-parter. I'm going to 5 points today. I'm going to share another 5 points next week, and then later on I'm going to do a different topic and help you figure out how you can choose a great Africa travel company, a great tour operator next time you are planning your trip back home. Thanks so much. If you like this video, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and most of all, do leave a comment. If there's anything that you found, if you used a local guide previously, any other tip that you want to share, I'm all here for it. I love to hear what you've got to say. Bye, and I will see you next week.